Dobro pozdravovat, moi druzie, Heart Healthy Hustle podcast. Hi, I'm Chase Chewning, and you are listening to the Heart Healthy Hustle podcast with my good friend, Jonathan Frederick.
Think big. Think even bigger. Take some risks. God's got your back. Go for it. Don't hold back. Don't ever have regrets in your life. Go fail. Go grow from those things. Live your life.
Your identity is not defined by your successes or your failures.
If you're not happy where you're at, you won't be happy where you're going. Choose to do the things that will make you the person you want to be, that will make you a better person next week and next year.
You're going to have to leave some things you're actually good at behind so that you can find what you're wired for, what you're born for.
Being a world-class entrepreneur is being in every area of life excellent.
It is the little things that are so easy not to do.
The best thing that you can do is assume the best in people.
I want people around the world to believe they can do something great with their life.
If I build the biggest business, but I destroy my physical body and I lose my health, I don't think that's success. While you're on the journey climbing to success, never forget the things that matter most.
If you like this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can get notified every time a new episode is released.
Welcome back to the Heart Healthy Hustle Show. Today's guest is a unique treat for you, the listener. I'm excited to bring to you Chase Chewning of EverForward Radio. Chase, say what's up to the audience. What's up to the audience? I take my directions very explicit. I should have known. Chase has served in the military. Chase, give the audience a brief background, a bio on you, where you're at now, what you're all about. Yeah, brief bio. I'm originally from the mountains of Southwest Virginia. Grew up in a pretty conservative military home. Wound up then going into the military myself. Got out after 6 years active duty. Did the whole college thing. Got into the whole fitness thing. Fast forward a few steps in there, and now I'm doing the whole LA thing. So life and jobs and opportunities have kind of kept presenting themselves and dangling that California sunshine out here. And so now went from East Coast to West Coast. I've been living out in California, LA now for the past several months. Share with us a favorite success quote or a saying you live by. I know you're a philosophical guy. You've been searching for truth. It seems like you're on a quest for truth. Is that true? I would say, yes, that is true. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And I believe that's from Henry Ford. I absolutely love that quote. That is life-changing. It's one of those quotes where you're like, wait, that's true. It's like so simple, yet, you know? So effective. Yeah, and the reason it's true is because belief. Belief is such a powerful thing. To give the audience a connection point and to build some rapport with you, Chase, outside of the radio-esque richness of your vocal cords, I think people are probably at this point like, wait a second, is this guy like, what does he do, like the LA DJ or something? What filter does he have on his voice? What kind of mic is that? I guarantee you get some. What kind of mic are you using? It's the Morgan Freeman microphone. I'm giving away all my secrets. Unreal. Oh man. Share with us the background on your story. You didn't start out as an entrepreneur. You joined the military. Going back to your life at that time? Yeah, definitely, man. Yeah, I enlisted into the U.S. Army right after high school. Technically still in high school. My dad drove me up from Roanoke, Virginia to Richmond, Virginia to the capital there to swear in on my Christmas break. And this would have been 2002. I shipped off for basic training in 2003. From there, went on to some training in California, some more training in Texas, wound up getting stationed at a few different places in Texas, was then, sent a few different places over the world, was TDY, we call it, temporary duty over in Germany. And then from Germany, I was able to travel and to go to some other places on assignment. What is it? On the record, off the record kind of stuff. I could tell you more, but I'd have to kill you. The nature of my job was I was in the intelligence field. So a lot of it was the confidential super secret squirrel work that a lot of my peers wound up going into like government agencies and stuff afterwards. But that was a natural path for them in that world, in that intelligence world, and especially being a linguist. I was a Russian linguist. Really? Yeah, it was my job. Yeah, I didn't speak a lick of it going in, which honestly, when I told my teachers, I'm sure my high school Spanish teacher was really rolling her eyes at me because I sucked at languages. I had to take like Spanish summer school, but the main reason why I chose this job was just when you go into the military, you have to kind of take a series of aptitude tests, and how I scored in them opened me up for different jobs. If you score higher, you get these kind of more
I guess, higher respect to it or in more technical jobs. And so then once you get into that category, then they want to test your capability. Well, okay, well, what can you learn? What can you be trusted with? And that's how I kind of fell into the intel field, more specifically linguistics. For whatever reason, it's called the D-Lab, the Defense Language Aptitude Battery Test. Hands down, my head is spinning from that test, and it's been 10, 15 years ago. They were like, yeah, you know what, you're best suited for Russian. I was like, okay. So after basic training, they shipped me off to, it's called the Defense Language Institute. It's basically the college, this linguistics college for all branches of the military. I was stationed up in Monterey, California for about a year, a little over a year. It took me longer, which for a reason I'll get into here in a second. I actually wound up having to leave due to some family issues. But yeah, every day, man, wake up, go to sleep, Russian, like no English, just total immersion, native speakers, just every day for 7, 8, 9 hours. You're just learning history, culture, language, economics, geography. In 1 year, it's the equivalent of a 4-year collegiate program. So yeah, a year and a half later almost, Army spat me out as a Russian linguist. And I did that for a while. Dobre Pajalava. Yeah, there we go.
What does that mean?
Welcome. It's like a mile-long word just to say welcome. Yeah, Dobro Pajalava.
That's awesome, dude. Talking about your podcast in detail as well, but let's focus on your story first. Why did you enlist?
Yeah, good question. I enlisted because at the time, like I said, I was still in high school. I was 17. And growing up in a military household, like I said, my dad was in the Army. He started off National Guard, which is basically like part-time Army. And then he went active duty, which is full-time. And so got a glimpse of that. My uncle, my grandfather, like family lineage for military service goes way, way, way back. Like we think we've traced it back to even the American Revolution. And so that really kind of resonated with me. It's cool, right?
Wow.
Like you can kind of like tether yourself to something that long and that much bigger than yourself. And that hit home, literally. It meant more to me then to kind of pursue that. And I recognized at the time I had all these benefits waiting for me. I could go to school while I was in the service. When I got out, whether it was 4 years, 6 years, or 20 years later, I had free college benefits. And my dad really just painted this picture. He sold me on the military. It was never like, hey, Chase, we have the legacy. This is what we do. Like, so you will do it. He just presented the options to me. He told me straight up, if you want to go to college, cool, we'll do college, but let's just go maybe talk to some recruiters. So I actually first kind of looked at the Air Force. They were like, yeah, take some pamphlets, maybe sign up for a job, call me back kind of thing. But then the recruiter at the Army office there, he just really sold me, shout out Staff Sergeant Rue at the time. He persuaded me, he behooved me, as we call it in the military, to sign up with Uncle Sam with them. I enlisted right away for 6 years. That was the incentive for that job, for the linguistics job. And they also dangled a $20,000 sign-up bonus in front of me as well. So I was like, commit 6 years. If I don't like it, I'll get out. I'll go to school. I'll only be like 23, 24. I can go to school for free and make 20 grand. It was really appealing to a 17-year-old at the time.
For those, including myself, who aren't aware, do you get paid a salary while you're serving as well?
Yes. Well, over the years, we've seen a couple of government shutdowns that I had some friends still in that didn't get a paycheck for, a few weeks. Hell, I think even a couple of months. But yes, I went in as an E2, which is like second level up to bare bones entry. And I wound up in my 6-year contract leaving as an E6. So staff sergeant. I actually made E6 in a little under technically 5 years, which I'm very proud of. I very rarely try to toot my own horn on things, but anyone listening who knows the military ranking structure knows that E6 in under 5 years is a very hard thing to do. At that time, I was planning on making it a career. So yeah, I had the salary. They paid for my food. They paid for my housing, all my medical care, travel. I mean, it really was this amazing infrastructure, this amazing support system, not just in your job, your careers, your colleagues, but financially, and always having clothes on your back and a roof over your head and a place to get a hot meal, and get paid at the same time.
Do you have any wild stories that you're able to share?
That I'm able to share? Yeah, that's the tricky part. Like I said, the nature of my job is literally classified. I had the highest security clearance you could get, and even above that most people know about. It's tricky.
That's fair. That's actually an even cooler answer. How does that come about? Do you seek that out, or do they approach you one night while you're asleep and say, hey, we choose you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, are you even allowed to share that?
Yeah, that is public knowledge. I can talk about that. Absolutely. So anyone, like I said, as you go through these series of aptitude tests, you become more available to certain jobs, certain things in the military. But with that comes, that's like dependent upon your background check. You have to get a security clearance. And it was beneficial for me in the sense that while I was in basic training and while I was in this language school, it's a long period of training. From when I left for boot camp to when I finished language training was, almost a year and a half at least. At least back then, it took about a year to get this high-level top secret security clearance covered. So I would get letters in boot camp. It was funny from like my friends in high school and my family. They were like, I hope you're doing well. Also, 2 FBI agents came and knocked on my door asking me questions about you. What's that about?
Your friends?
Yeah. Because when you go in, you have to list everybody you know, your immediate family, their extended family, your friends, your teachers, your school, like any and every time you went out of the country, were you born in the States? It's this huge, extensive process. And then you can go through all of that. Like I could have gone through I know people who this happened to and it was horrible. You would go through that whole period of training and then like you wouldn't get your security clearance. And then you have to, it's called reclass, your MOS. You have to change jobs. So it's all dependent upon whether or not the government gives you the check mark as to like, yes, we have vetted you and we trust you with our government secrets and anything else that may come up during your time in service.
One phrase that's always carried you as well as your brother has been living a life ever forward. Share with the audience where that comes from.
Absolutely. Yeah, me, my family, my present family in the past, that keeping with the military theme, that actually came from the Army, came from the military. Like I said, our dad was National Guard first. He was assigned to a National Guard unit back in our hometown in Roanoke, Virginia. And that unit was under a bigger division, a bigger unit of the 116th Infantry Regiment. And the 116th goes back to being a quote army, a quote band of brothers before we even had the Army, before we were even a country. It goes back before the Declaration of Independence, which is really freaking cool. And every unit you're in the military has a saying, a phrase, a creed, and theirs was EverForward. He picked it up from his time in service there. When you're in the military, regardless of the branch, but I'll speak specifically here, the Army, the relationships you make, the experiences you make are so visceral. It's not just something that, happened that you remember. It's something that happened that you feel. And whether it's good, bad, or ugly, like just the camaraderie and the experiences are unparalleled. And again, anyone listening, who's been in the military knows exactly what I'm talking about. The experiences he had with that unit and his band of brothers in living a life ever forward, he carried on throughout his entire military career. He then went on to active duty and he was an infantryman. When you think Army soldier, that's the typical idea we have in our heads, and that's what he did. He was the guy, the grunt, the ground pounder, as we call him, doing war games all the time, jumping out of helicopters and airplanes, and he eventually got assigned to the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. He was in a small unit called the Air Assault Rakkasans, and he just, even there, like brought it with him. Unfortunately, us Chewnings, apparently we like to serve, but we're not meant to stay in. I got injured, got medical discharge. My dad was in a helicopter accident. He was a Persian Gulf vet. He got medically discharged. He had complete spinal reconstructive surgery, and even in all of that. And so he was just like ever forward, just keep moving forward no matter what. And so from a very young age, 5, 6, 7, I remember this phrase. I remember this lifestyle. I remember this vision of what he wanted his life to look like and feel like. And so we grew up with it. When I say it's what we believe, it is what we believe. It literally was ingrained in me from the time I could learn to read and talk and walk. It really, really became embedded in us when I left for the Army. During my time at boot camp in 2003, he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. He became sick with Lou Gehrig's disease, AKA, it's the official name ALS. And if anyone knows anything about that, it is one of the most cruel things in the world. It is such a cruel disease where your body basically just eats itself alive. But the mind stays sharp. Everything we know about it, it doesn't affect the mind. They're completely aware and cognitive throughout the whole process, but they lose their ability to speak. They can't move. You become a prisoner in your own body. And he had a really accelerated case, and 18 months from diagnosis to when he passed away. We never once saw him complain, never once heard him, lash out to the skies, why God, me, or, ever tried to like play the blame game or pull the pity card. He, like to his literally his last breath, I was there with him his last hours. He was just so at peace with everything. And we didn't know it at the time, but he was giving us our final lesson and what it means to live a life ever forward, and to just, no matter what, endure, be resilient, and persevere. And that this horrible thing that you think you're going through, or you did go through, is truly your greatest gift. I didn't think it or know it at the time, but it took me about 10 years or so to go through my grief and dealing with it, not dealing with it. Really the big mental health struggle, to understand that gift that he was showing us and me and my family, and teaching us this, what these two words truly mean. And he absolutely was right. The most horrible thing that happened to us was the greatest thing that ever happened to us. Without that, I of course wish my dad was still here. We all do, but none of us, me and my brother specifically, would be doing what we're doing now if it were not for that. He truly gave us our life's purpose.
That's deep, man. I appreciate you sharing that, Chase. It's amazing when people are going through, when people go through like the absolute worst things, where they'd be 100% justified to just complain and hate their life. Like your father being a perfect example of this, actually embodying EverForward. Not only that, like when you said that was him giving us our final lesson, like that almost broke me up, because like I can see that in my mind, It's like he was living the example and ingraining it basically into your souls before he was gone. And wow. Okay. I'd love to jump back into your story from when you got discharged due to the injury. What injury did you say happened?
Yeah, so the nature of my job, short little backstory, they don't really speak Russian in Iraq or Iran. And, I served during OIF and OEF. And I enjoyed what I did, but I wanted to kind of play a different role. I wanted to be the soldier. And so I volunteered. There was always the opportunity to volunteer for assignments. So I volunteered for some deployments. The first one looked promising, but they were holding out for someone for a higher rank at the time, and it fell through. The second option was looking even more promising, so I put myself in the places in terms of getting promoted and just going through all the training and doing all these, pre-deployment checklists that you have to do in pre-deployment war games. And in one of those training experiences, I was leading an ambush. We're playing war games. I led an ambush with my team against a convoy. We call them the OP4, the opposing force, the fake enemy. And in that ambush, I tore my left hamstring, suffered injuries to my L4 and L5 vertebrae.
Oh my gosh.
And just messed up basically from kind of like midline back down. Wound up having to have both of my hips completely reconstructed. Like my femurs taken out of my legs and, reshaped and shaved down and put back in. And then I've got 2 rods and pins in each hip, and then they kind of sewed me back up.
Did a tank run you over? What?
The actual pinpoint second of the injury, I honestly is a blank for me, because it happens so fast, and the brain, the body likes to suppress trauma because it just goes into survival mode. But I was hiding in, we call it a sticks lane. I was hiding basically in the trees behind this berm, and I just popped up and was just leading this attack. And it wasn't like anything impact driven, but it was just, all these movements, I was in, we call it full battle rattle. So I had all of my gear on, you're carrying about 60, 80 pounds of extra gear, your body armor, my weapons, my rucksack, all of these things. And just the wrong movement at the wrong speed with the wrong position. And, honestly, looking back, it was probably dehydrated and been several days and sleep deprived and all of these kind of things that, I now know about the human body were not in my favor. And I just moved the wrong way. Too much, too soon, too fast, too much load on my body. And then, so I want my last year and a half, I was actually a patient. I got yanked from that roster. I got yanked from my unit, sent to this medical hold unit, where I became a patient for the next year and a half. They cut me open. They did one side of my hip, bedridden, on quarters, we called it, basically at home, just recovering. My only job for the last year and a half was to go through these surgeries, recover, get to a point to where I could, get to a wheelchair or crutches and hobble my way into physical therapy, learn how to walk again, learn how to, teach my body how to have this load-bearing capability to walk on both feet, both legs. And once I got to that point, they're like, all right, cool. Now we're going to put you back on the table, cut open your other side, and you're going to go through the whole thing again. And then at the end of it, I became non-deployable. I was deemed unfit for duty, too broke to put back into my regular unit. So due to the nature and severity of my injuries and just where I was then, I was actually so broke they medically retired me. So it's kind of another blessing in disguise. I have full retiree benefits now as if I served 20 years. So I've got my Army retiree card. I can go on post. I got TRICARE and, health insurance and all these things now. So, again, it really, really sucked at the time. It was one of the worst things I've gone through, but it truly did help set me up for success in a lot of ways now.
That explains your voice, Chase. You're the real life Captain America.
Hey, I'll take it, man. Chris Evans is a good looking dude.
Now I get it. Okay.
Yeah, but I think to get back to your question there was, that really was for me the catalyst to learn and get involved in health and fitness and nutrition, because I was always active my whole life, and being in the military is very, very active, but that drastically changed for me. I didn't want to be what I saw a lot of other people become once they become injured and hurt. The physical injury turns into the mental hurt, and then it's just a negative downward spiral. And so that sparked my interest. I was like, they're kicking me out. I need to rehab. I need to learn how to act, think, eat differently. So why not go get a formal education on it? So I moved back to Virginia, went to school, VCU.
What year is this?
This was 2009. Which was the same year. My brother and I were 4 years apart. He's 4 years younger than me. Oddly enough, it was the same time he was starting college. So even though we're 4 years apart, I went to college with my brother. We went to college at the same time, which was kind of cool. Our mom really liked that. She's like, yay, I only have to go to one graduation. But so I went to VCU for exercise science, and in that did the exercise science studying, exercise physiology, personal training, working in gyms. Then fast forward, did some internships that wound up getting me more into the clinical exercise physiology and health coaching. And then I went to grad school for health promotion, all the while working for this concierge medical practice where I was a health coach and exercise physiologist for a couple of offices up in Northern Virginia, but I also ran their entire wellness department. So I oversaw about 8 or 9 offices up and down the East Coast. I was in charge of, hiring, firing, training other health coaches and leading initiatives for wellness programs, weight loss programs, helping our patients. It was a medical model. We didn't call them clients, helping our patients get well, stay well, and really working one-on-one with their doctors, their primary care providers, to provide the medical model they needed, but also fitness, nutrition, and, the health coaching paradigm that was really kind of up and coming at the time. So that's what I did for years and years. And then I just reached a tipping point with everything that I wanted to create and everything I wanted to do in terms of offering services to people, where I felt the whole industry was shifting and where we needed to pivot to really match the needs of our audience and our patients. There's only so much you can do, when you're working inside someone else's machine. There are a lot of other parts. And so it wasn't fully rehab, but we had rehab providers in-house. But basically, my job every day was we would do body composition analysis. In my office, we had treadmill, we had a body comp machine, we had weights. So we would do personal training, sub-max VO2 testing, body fat analysis, and then true nutrition planning and max VO2 minor stress tests on the treadmill, get their baseline information demographics wise, and then build their workouts, build their nutrition plans, or just use that information in conjunction with their physical, their medications, and anything from their doctor to really provide this whole lifestyle approach to improving and maintaining their health.
Powerful. So jump into how you transitioned from that to continuing the EverForward legacy with EverForward Radio and the business that you've built around that.
Yeah. So at the time, I was running the podcast while still working for this company. We launched the podcast January 22nd, which is the memorial of his passing. I launched it January 22nd, 2017. So we're going into our third year on the show. And before that, there was EverForward Apparel that was introduced. EverForward as a brand, as a entity, was introduced to the world by my brother first through the apparel, and then I was like, I have something to provide as well. I feel like there's more we can do with this. And at the time, I was really enjoying and listening to a lot of podcasts, and I was like, well. Then one day, someone just said, "Hey, Chase, you got a good radio voice," and I was like, "Let me put something to it." And so then we launched EverForward Radio, and then all throughout that kind of next year, I realized that my time at this company was running out. I was just not showing up the same way. Like I was saying earlier, there's only so much you can do when you want to try to change the world, but you're in someone else's company. So I dropped my notice. I gave myself kind of this personal goal to develop this platform. Now it's called EverForward Coach, to provide similar services, fitness, nutrition coaching. We launched that in October of 2017. I left my job in December 2017, went full-time with the podcast, went full-time with the coaching January of last year, January of 18. And it's just kind of snowballed from there, man.
Chase, go ahead and share some of your most exciting guests that you've had on the show, or your favorite.
Oh, yeah, man. Anybody in, I'll say, the podcast space, more specifically the health and fitness space. If you don't know the Model Health Show, if you don't know Mr. Sean Stevenson, then you're living under a rock. Literally because of him, because of his show, and because of a live event that I went to with him, we wouldn't have EverForward Radio. His content is and was then such a huge catalyst. And he's been on the show 3 times, but one of them I just repurposed from that live event, and I had a small interaction with him. We captured a mini interview, but just recently, as we're recording this now, last week he was on the show for our first full-length interview, and that was like, I was fanboying out hard on that one. He's amazing. Sean Stevenson's great. I honestly respect and admire everything that Bedros Keuilian does. He's the founder, CEO of Fit Body Boot Camp. He just launched a book, Man Up, and I had him on the show several months ago, and his story, talk about someone who overcame adversity. He literally fled communist Russia, hiding all across Europe to get to the States and living in poverty, and just now he's just this entrepreneur badass who is just dominating. His story is amazing. Number 3, I'll kind of cheat, and I don't know if she can hear me, but my wife, a couple months ago, we started introducing like a mini series. Once a month, we do a bonus episode, and we talk about relationship health. I think a lot of times that goes overlooked in our wellness journey. We look at fitness, we look at nutrition, but I'm a big believer in the power of our relationships. So those important people around you. So she always is really a delight to have on the show. It's been great.
Yeah, I actually heard your episode together. I think it was the one we were talking about your wins of 2018.
Yeah. We love that one.
Yeah, you guys have great synergy back and forth because it works. So keep it up, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing those. Going into the Heart Healthy Hustle Round, I'm going to ask you a series of rapid fire questions. They're going to be in 3 different categories, Chase. Are you ready?
Let's go.
First category is heart. What activity do you use to care for and strengthen your internal character? That
is a really, really good question. It's so good. In fact, I might co-sign on that, and you say it later, man. I would expand upon what you said. Making time for myself. That is, I think, something that goes overlooked because we think we just need to stay busy and grind, but you're really doing yourself a disservice. So I really do have, it's pretty much in the mornings. My morning routine is my me time. I just allow myself the time and the space to just do whatever I need to do, feel whatever I need to feel, whether it's being lazy, whether it's doing yoga, whether it's reading a book, whatever, just, allowing myself that time and that space for myself.
What's that book called that you post almost daily?
Yeah, that's part of my morning practice for like going on 3 years now. It's called The Daily Stoic. Quotes and insights all from Stoic philosophy.
Hustle. What do you do to maintain your physical health and avoid burnout?
Again, make time for myself. Make time to look at, hey, have I just been hunched over the laptop all day and I need to just take a break, or do I need to go to the gym, take a walk? Absolutely. My wife makes fun of me when I schedule. I'll schedule in like breakfast, lunch, snack, and I'll schedule in fitness, or I'll schedule in walk. But yeah, if you don't make time for these things that I know contribute to my overall productivity and health, it's so easy to just kind of skip them over. So again, make time and make space for honoring my body after I've done the work, usually in the mornings, like I said, to kind of honor my mind and my heart.
So what are some specifics that you do to exercise?
It's really evolved over the years. I'll say,
so I'm interested.
Yeah. So, when I got out of the military, it kind of it transferred from just that high endurance running soldier style where you just throw a bunch of weight on you and just move to getting into the gym and, typical back then, this was like 2009, 10, 11, typical like bro splits and bodybuilding style and just, making sure that you do 5,000 bicep curls every workout, to powerlifting. That's about the time when I was training with my brother a lot, and he really got interested in powerlifting, and he's just stupid strong. And so I enjoyed working out with him and our friends at the time. So, and then over the years, it's really shifted into a lot more of the parasympathetic. I do a lot more kind of low intensity stuff now, long walks. I do yoga a lot. I still stay true to my roots. Whenever I'm in the gym, if I'm moving weight around, it's some heavy ass weight. I just love to really just stimulate the central nervous system. And also for me, it's just a way to kind of make sure I still got it and be like, take that, bionic hips. Honestly, it's taken me a long time. It's taken me years to get to this point now, but I'm just amazed at the human body. I'm amazed at my body's ability to adapt and overcome from these injuries and stuff. So yeah, I just like going heavy compound lifts, and then from there, it's a lot of low intensity parasympathetic work.
Do your past injuries ever flare up or give you issues with mobility?
Yes. It is, good days, bad days. And that really does. That's why I say that I'm not a huge fan of like exercise programming just because I'm not adherent, but that's usually because I can't really rely on it. My body kind of dictates what I'm going to be doing. So if I walk into the gym, if I'm on a program like today is supposed to be squat day, you're going for max singles and my hips are flared up, I just know that's not a good idea. And I've made that mistake in the past. When I was at VCU, like literally 2 examples come to mind right now, training with Max. I was like, bro, like he literally had to help me walk out. I just was pushing my body too far. And so since then, it's really helped humble me. And so what I do is when it comes time to train, comes time to do whatever, I'm like, all right, Chase, what is your body telling you it needs at once? What can you do? And then go from there. But even to the extent, every time I go back to the orthopedic surgeon for follow-ups every year, they actually want to redo my left hip. I had some other injuries. I re-injured it basically, but I'm pushing that off as long as possible until they're like, hey, Chase, all right, we really have to do it again right now.
Is a hip replacement going to include pelvic acetabulum or the femoral head?
Yeah, so I didn't have hip replacement. I had, you're hitting some keywords there. I had femoral acetabular correction. So basically, they popped out the femur, shaved it down, reshaped it, put it back in, and I have 2 pins in. So what they would do now, they say, supposedly, it would be less invasive. It would be more laparoscopic. But basically, they need to go back into my left hip because I re-injured, had a partial tear in my labrum. So they want to go in and kind of clean that up, make some more space in my femur and hip joint. I don't think they need to replace the pins. I think those are good. Maybe I should just do yoga full time and avoid surgery forever.
Hustle. What's your main motivation for doing what you do and living a life ever forward, Chase?
I would say that I would answer that question before that it would be for legacy. That would be for, honoring this thing that we got from our dad and this thing that we, kind of felt he passed on to us. But the more and more I thought about that, that's really not at all what happened. Our dad, our family, he just wanted us to just do our life's calling and to just, no matter what, give it your all and have no regrets. And even if you failed and fall flat on your face, if you can get up and know that you gave it your all, then you never truly failed. And so I used to think that it was for legacy and it was for him. Now I would say that, we got a lot of that from him. We got that whole message and mantra from him and my family growing up. But now the more I'm able to find ways to share that message and find various platforms, whether it's through a social media post or a business endeavor, I think I've pivoted into realize that it's for me to live a life ever forward means that I have this obligation now to instill this idea of what is possible in as many other people as possible. Because ever forward means something to me. Ever forward means something to my brother, my mom, my sister, my whole family. We know what it means to us, but what we found is that if it can mean whatever it needs to mean to anybody else. And if that sparks their ability to create something similar, their own brand, their own phrase, their own philosophy, that's truly what it meant to be. It's not about making others live a life ever forward or believe what we believe, but just carving a path, carving a space for them to find something for them to believe.
It's powerful, man. I want to jump deeper into that point. When I transitioned into entrepreneurship, there's still something sticking, like something in the back of my subconscious mind telling me, you have no right to do this. Who are you to think that you can be an entrepreneur and you can do things on your own and you can. And I finally found out that I think a lot of that reservation during that transitional period of deciding that I was going to pursue this came from a subconscious belief to the ideal of frugality and hard work. So for example, growing up, I wasn't poor. I had everything I needed. I was very blessed. I'm grateful for my childhood. My parents were terrific. I'm blessed beyond measure. Don't get me wrong. But I did go to sleep many nights as a kid, hearing my mom downstairs just to make some extra money. And back then she was on book lists to sell books for like 25-cent profit, 75-cent profit. We're not talking $5 to $20 a book. She was making pennies on her efforts. I remember the most visceral, if you want to talk to me about grinding, something that gets me so motivated, and I've never actually told her this, I probably will at some point before long, but the sound of packing tape being unwound and ripped and used she used to use brown paper bags from the grocery store for cheaper packaging. And this was just to kind of make ends meet as I was going through my childhood through all the way up through high school. My mom and dad had an agreement where they both were active in the finances, but she was more so the one that would count every cent. My parents helped me with college. They didn't pay for all of it, but they helped me. And when I started thinking about entrepreneurship, though, I'm thinking to myself, what is it that holds people back? What is it that really holds people back? Some people will say, well, I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And okay, fine. But even still, that's not enough to go for it. And I realized I felt almost scared and ashamed to not honor that effort that my parents had both put in, that sacrifice that they made for me as a child to provide me a good childhood. If I do this entrepreneurship, am I still honoring that sacrifice that they've made for me to have a successful life? You know what I mean? So my question for you then, I love that you said that. So you used to think it was all about legacy with EverForward, with the phrase, what it means, what it represents. And now you are seeing it as more so it's about doing individuals' life's calling, just giving it your all in that. And I think that's a beautiful restructuring of the way you're seeing that. And I'd love to hear from you directly. Did you struggle in that transition period to go all in on yourself and your entrepreneurial vision? Was it extra difficult knowing the sacrifice that your parents had made, and now, with your father having passed and trying to think back then that it was still about legacy for you? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And short answer, I'll say yes. Anyone who is self-employed or steps out into the entrepreneurial space and says otherwise, be very, very leery of them. But I want to backtrack real quick, and I'll just highlight a point you're talking about, legacy versus kind of how I'm viewing it now, and that I love the idea of legacy, but you're absolutely right. Once I really kind of recognized and got out of it what I needed at that time, it really didn't make sense. The whole point of EverForward is to, look at the future, look at no matter what, you have to keep this momentum and just keep moving forward towards progression and staying on the path. And so staying anchored in its meaning and staying anchored in its potential in the past just didn't make sense. So that served me, and that was my understanding of it. And that's kind of where I'm going with it now, just to kind of wrap that point up. But when I was stepping out, I will caveat this by saying I was in a unique space that this was, like I said, 2017. I was in a unique space that the whole social media thing, Instagram, YouTube, insert any platform here, was really up and coming and transitioning from just being a space to share a cool filtered picture or a funny video to a platform that has potential to leverage into your business. And so my brother was doing it. A lot of his friends were doing it. And we, all of our friends were the same friends. And so I was exposed to it. So I had a lot of great just exposure. I had a lot of great experiences in it. But more importantly, over those years, I had developed these relationships. I had become friends and, in a lot of ways was being mentored by, directly or indirectly, these people who were already doing that. So it was difficult, yes. I definitely I recognize I probably had a little bit of an upper hand by just having access to those people to vent to and pick their brains on. But I knew that I was going to be successful no matter what, because I knew the level to which EverForward. So I always knew that EverForward was going to be something, and I always had that kind of pilot light going on in me. But then it was just up to me, right, to really turn up the flame and to apply purpose to that passion. And so, it was scary as hell, because at the time, my wife and I just got married. We were, moving, going through all these big life changes. And, it really was the worst time ever to try to be like, hey, I'm going to make my own money. But I made it work. And so I always give credit to the people that were there for me when I called up freaking out, when I would go into my brother's room when we were living together for a short time and be like, yo, man, like, how do you do this? What's a good insight? A good angle to do this, do that? I'm very, very grateful. And I recognize that it took my hard work. It took my discipline. It took my perseverance and resiliency to just show up and do it every day. But it was because of all the guidance and mentorship and relationships that I was able to build and still have and still continue to build to this day. So you can't do it alone. You can maybe be good on your own, but the greatness that I'm seeking and the greatness that I try to instill in others is through that power of relationships.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I'm seeing, transitioning from what I saw as a natural alienation process to now realizing over the last 2-3 years that I by no means want to be a lone wolf. I want to be a teammate. I want to be on investing into individuals. I want to be building relationships. And honestly, that's when I started this podcast. The tagline was connecting proactive young pros, and it still is. Now I'm focused more on live wide open since my friend's passing last year, but it's been a great journey and I can resonate with that heavily. Do you have like a number one tip or advice for anyone who, like myself, who's really trying to reach out to connect with other people who are like-minded? And here's the tricky thing, Chase, is like, no disrespect if you're in network marketing or MLM, but I mean actual entrepreneurs who are, they have, and again, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, I'm talking about people who don't have a blueprint from their higher up telling them, hey, here's your business on your website / your name. No disrespect to you if that's your hustle. It's hard. I understand. Do you have a tip for connecting with other entrepreneurs who are the truest definition of entrepreneurs?
Get comfortable very quickly with failing. Not so much in the sense of just being okay with not succeeding in something, but just know that it is going to happen. And if you know something's going to happen, it takes the surprise factor away from it a bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, right. So, but then be able to do that, but then also just know that you're ready and in a space mentally and emotionally to truly ask yourself, all right, what is this teaching me? What did I do wrong? And in that, a second point is to always look at yourself first. I think a lot of mistakes people make, especially in the entrepreneur space, is like, oh, well, this podcast didn't do as well. It's because the guest didn't reshare it, or this person never responds to their DMs. They're an a-hole, or insert any reason about them. No matter what you think, just turn that around and look, all right, what did I do wrong? Even if you think that that's not the case, get comfortable with asking yourself that question. It will force you to grow. It will force you to look more objectively at your business plan. You will look more objectively at everything you do and create, and how you email people and how you talk to people. If you just always think that no matter what, whether I succeed or fail, it is all up to me.
Are there masterminds you'd recommend? Pods of entrepreneurs where there's like a buy-in or anything like that from a tactical point of view for connecting with others?
Yeah, and I know that's a really I don't know, maybe it's always been there and we just didn't know it. Now social media is putting it on blast, but masterminds, groups, I will recommend the same path. This is where I think a lot of people, we look to people who are, we think they're successful or maybe further down the path that we want to go down. Like, well, what did you do? Who did you hire? Yeah, I hired a coach for a long time and I still have multiple people, mentors, coaches in my life. But here's what I'll tell people from a tactical point of view first. Journal. Listen to audiobooks, listen to podcasts, do all of these things. Go to Google University. Like my homie Sean Stevenson says, go to Google University and open yourself to the possibility. Maybe you live in Podunk, Virginia, like I did. Like Roanoke, Virginia is about as big as my thumbnail. And, it's really hard for people to grow.
It's bigger than that, man.
2 thumbnails at this point. We've grown. I think we have 3 Starbucks now. But, that's another reason. People look at, I can't do this. I can't be successful because of where I live. I do agree that environment can be very beneficial, but you have the power to change your environment from your smartphone, your computer. So start there. That's exactly what I did. I didn't join a mentorship. I didn't join a mastermind, until like years later, but I started listening to the things that resonated with me and the people that I saw myself potentially becoming or like creating something like them. That was my start. And then, from there, just, keep showing up, keep emailing, keep creating the things that you feel the most passionate about. And, over time, those people that you're seeking guidance from, they will look at you. They will see the work you've done. And this is exactly what happened to me. And they see the resilience, they see the consistency, and they're like, wow, like now it's not so much like, hey, this guy keeps blowing me up, trying to be a part of me. Like I want to be a part of what he's got going on or she's got going on, because the proof is in the action right there. So yeah, there's so much free content out there, so much work, like literally just yourself. Start with yourself first. Just open piece of paper, get a journal, get a notebook, and just pour out whatever's going on in your head and learn and grow from there. And then after that, I wholeheartedly believe in, yes, this is what I do, part of my business, to take away the bias there. But yes, investing in a coach, investing in someone who can strategically guide you down a path is worth its weight in gold. Once you get to that point where it makes sense and it's not another stress or burden on you, it always comes back. The ROI is infinite. I wholeheartely believe.
A couple points on what you just shared. That in and of itself, that 2-minute soundbite could be in the entire episode. So much to take away from that. 100% agree. Man, that is huge. A lot of people will not go for what they want to go for because they have a list of excuses. The biggest probably being, so for people who want to start a business that requires them to connect with people or connect with people who have done more than them, for example. What you said there, I have found to be 100% true, is keep showing up. Eventually you will attract the right people and they will be drawn to what you have built. And it takes faith. It takes congruence in lifestyle. It takes time, patience, and it takes obviously integrity, intensity. And like you said, once you keep showing up, they will eventually notice if it's the right thing and say, oh, hey, actually that would benefit me to be affiliated or do something in business with this individual because look at their resilience.
Can I tell you something, Jonathan? Can I tell you something about that? This guy I was telling you about before, Sean Stevenson, right? And everyone thinks I'm like his biggest fanboy, and I am. 2 years. I spent 2 years sliding into his DMs, leaving 5-star ratings and reviews on his podcast, sharing out his podcast.
Hold on. Did you have multiple iTunes accounts and you're like, hashtag this is Chase, by the way?
I wasn't that level creepo, but I'll tell you, man.
You're like screenshotting the DM. By the way, this was me too. You're welcome. 10 more reviews.
I'm making like 30 different Gmail accounts every day. But no, I mean, total transparency here. Earlier, I mentioned how I went to one of his live events, right? Well, that was literally the same week as I was kicking off my podcast, January 2017. And my wife and I got tickets to a show, and I was like, oh, Sean, you're in my city here for a couple of days. He was like touring the whole place with his family. Like, hey man, you're here for a couple of days. I'm starting my podcast. I've listened to your show for years, which is basically me saying like, hey, I think you owe me this, right? I had the misconception. My ego was getting in the way of, yep. And I was like, hey man, let's meet up. Let me interview you. I would love for you to be my first guest.
What did he say?
He said no.
That's it?
He was, well, he said more than that. And I've told him this in person. I've thanked him. He gracefully turned me down. And he was like, wait, is this your first episode? Just getting started. Long story short, he told me, you know what? I want to come up on your show the best that I can. And I want you to have your voice and I want you to have your show established. So like hit me, it's a no right now, but it's not a no forever. And so 2 years I showed up and did the work and did the guests and did the podcast and did all the things, right? And then finally I got that yes. And you know what? That episode went out, like I said, recording this now like last week. That is the episode I wanted to have with him. If I would have done it back then 2 years ago, I would have listened back and like, oh my gosh, Chase, you wasted your first interview. Like this is not how you want to represent Sean. So it takes that ability, and it hurt a little bit. It stung. I was like, what? I've been listening to your show all the time. I promote you all the time. Like you owe me this, right? and I had to check that pretty quickly. And you're so true, man. Just show up and do the work, and like attracts like. And when that is meant to happen, it will happen.
Man, with Gary Vee's books being out and the popular message of, give value. It's not giving value if you tell someone to take this pen, metaphorical pen, that you want them to take so that they feel pressured to give back to you. That's not providing value.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of that approach. And that's interesting that I wouldn't even have considered that by your invitation to hit initially to Sean, but that does make sense in your mind. I've been listening, I've been supporting for, however many years you've had the show open. So therefore suggestively implying, well, yeah, wouldn't you want to be my first guest on my epic podcast that I didn't start yet? And in fact, a lot of people would have got dejected, but your response was very entrepreneurial in that you said, okay, 2 years. Okay, now I'll ask. And it actually worked out better. I got to tell you, I want to share a story with you guys. I was interviewing some pretty big entrepreneur, right? And in the online space, some people know him, some people don't. The point is, I was interviewing, is a couple. I interviewed the wife and I heard the husband in the background. And from seeing them kind of interact, their energy together, I thought to myself, this husband is very territorial. I could totally pick up on that. And I respect it. So I acknowledged it. I said, hey, like, does he want to join the interview? And she's like, oh, hold on, I'll ask. And then he was like, yeah, sure. Like, I'll jump in. And I was like, I was not prepared for it. I wasn't mad though. I was like, all right, cool. I got to think on my feet here. Well, what happened was I said, all right, blah, blah, blah. We do the intro like we did today, Chase. And then I was like, all right, we'll be starting in 30 seconds. And they whisper in the background. They don't think I can hear them on the mic. And you know what they said?
Are they talking shit?
Dude, the husband goes, and then I hear him go, how did I get sucked into this? And that grounded me like nothing ever has grounded me before.
Wow.
I was like, yeah, dude, because he didn't even know who I was or my intentions, business. Fair enough. But dude, it grounded me to where I was that interview came out pretty good because I looked at it like, I don't care if I tick them off. I don't care if I challenge them or make them feel uncomfortable. I didn't ever want to disrespect people, so I didn't. And I had fun with the interview, though, to whereas before, I was viewing them on a pedestal. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. You rose to the occasion, man. You were able to look at that deviation, that thing that is, for a lot of people, will completely disrupt your sense of self. You accepted that challenge, man. And that is exactly what I was talking about, being able to get comfortable with failing and like hearing and seeing those things and being grateful. Like someone else that I read and look up to all the time, Jocko Willink, when things don't go your way, it's like, good. This person doesn't want me to interview them. Good. I'm going to make this the best interview you've ever had. That is a check right there, man. I love that. Good on you.
Yeah, dude, it felt so good. Anyway, it really does make sense what you shared about Sean. That's a really cool story. And I'm excited to listen to that interview, hopefully tonight while I go to the gym. What do you think is holding back most proactive individuals, regardless of age, from fully thriving and actually becoming the person that they know they can be in every category?
100% just themselves. And that probably sounds like the easy answer, but it truly is. And here's why. I'm sure you've experienced this as well, Jonathan. That's what I know. When I look back at every time when I was trying to launch something or sell something or create something or make a video or a podcast or anything in this space now for myself, if it worked, it was because of me. And and all the people, behind the scenes. Like I said, I have a great community, but also like the failure too,
Yeah.
Man, it's just like we don't allow ourselves to just like go through that. And, we think that I failed once, so like I'm over, right? But before you can even get to a point of failing and learning from it and then growing and evolving from there, you're too afraid. And for a long time, I'll be totally honest, man, I could have left my job and done what I'm doing now a year before I did. The only thing holding me back was just the fear of getting started, the fear of making the money, and the fear of all of this, the fear of insert anything here. Once you just do that one thing, this is the problem where people get caught up. And I'll kind of try to say it more succinctly here. We think stepping out into our own, being our own boss, creating anything of value and worth that we're going to then rely on for our livelihood, we think we have to have every step mapped out. We think we have to have this beautiful business plan, this blueprint of steps 1 through 1 million. All you need is just the confidence to say, today I'm going to take a step. You don't even know, is it a half broken step? Is it a step up, step down, lateral? You don't even know the direction it's taking you, but you just have to have the confidence and decide that I'm going to take a step today, because that one step will show you where you need to go next. It'll show you where not to go next, sometimes even more importantly. Just the confidence to take that one step, create that little bit of momentum, one thing, any actionable item, because that is the first little snowflake of that massive snowball you're building that is just going to be the avalanche of your life.
Well, it's fascinating to hear that from you, being that you coming out of the military. From what you've shared, it sounds like you had a fairly intense time in the military, especially with your injury there towards the end and things going on in your personal life during that time. And yet you still had to deal with that fear of uncertainty before you jumped in,
And, I didn't know if I was going to be able to walk again. I didn't know if I was going to, be on crutches or a cane. I went and toured colleges, the only college I went to, on a cane still. I had to have my mom show up and help me walk around campus. Like, I didn't know what my life was going to look like. I didn't know if I was going to feel or physically be able to move a lot of days or like even get a job or, the military labeled me like, boom, you are broken. Boom, you are unfit for duty. Boom, you're no longer a soldier. Like, I talk about an identity completely ripped out from underneath you. I had planned on staying in for 20 years. I wanted to do the whole lifetime thing. Nothing is a given, basically, there. You have to be willing to say, good. Thank you for knocking me down on my face. Thank you, which, quick caveat, that's one of my, go listen to Seven Dust, the song Thank You. Listen to those lyrics. Like, thank you for shoving me down. Thank you for beating me to the ground. Thank you for humbling me. Thank you for all of these things. That is what it's all about. If you can just change the mindset perspective around how you look at these ups and downs, like, boom, the rest is easy.
Powerful stuff. Chase, can you share with us 3 of your most influential books and why?
Yeah, I'll echo what we were talking about earlier. The one I read every day, The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday. It's very influential because literally every morning it influences the tone, my outlook for the rest of the day. Another Ryan Holiday book, Ego is the Enemy. If I could, one book recommendation for every person in the world, no matter who you are or what you're trying to do, Ego is the Enemy will show you every which way that you really are an a-hole, even if you don't think you are. Just how to get the self out of the way, how to get out of your own way, to just be a better person, be a better spouse, a friend. I really recognize that one as probably one of the most influential books in my life. I'll go back to my military roots here. And again, someone else we've talked about, Jocko Willink, his 2 books recently, him and his co-writer, Leif, The Dichotomy of Leadership and Extreme Ownership, because not only does it highlight military applications, but real world applications and just understanding how to be a leader for yourself and for others, but also really understanding the delicate dance it takes and how to be the leader that you need and how to be the leader that your team, that your staff, your family needs. So those 3 for me, and that's it, man.
One of my favorite ways to learn is through listening. I do enjoy reading, but listening allows you to multitask. Let's say you're driving to work, you're running errands, cleaning up on a Saturday, whatever you're doing. Audio allows you to multitask, and that's why I've reached out to audible.com to get a promo set up between Heart Healthy Hustle Nation and Audible. I became an Audible affiliate, so you can get a free Audible audiobook. I use Audible for many of my audiobooks, tremendous selection of books readily available. So if you don't want to spend a monthly subscription to Audible, put in your name and email, then you will get a free audiobook at which point you can listen to that audiobook, keep it forever, and cancel your subscription before 30 days so that you don't get charged for the monthly subscription. This way you get a free book. Go to triplehAudiobook.com. That's HHHaudiobook.com.
How do you recommend showing up regardless of cynicisms? I'll put some context behind that question. Even for myself as a podcast host, it's good to have certain names on the show. Obviously, we both know that. Sean Stevenson, huge model health show. He's an OG of the space, and he's in the health and wellness industry.
The OG, man, yeah.
How do you, as a newer podcaster, or let's say anyone listening who's starting up something new where it's requiring them to reach out, show up effectively regardless of the cynicisms that a potential or prospective guest may or may not have about being a guest or working with you? Because we're in a space now where the word I like to use is privy to leveragepreneuring. So, for example,
I love that, man.
You know how easy it was to grow a podcast 5 years ago? It would have been 100 times easier because every single guest you had on would have been thrilled to have been on a podcast. How do you spell that? Podcast? Is that what it's called? Everyone would have been thrilled. They would have shared it to their audience. Look how relevant I am. I was on a podcast. And that helps a lot with growing audiences. Dude, I'll be honest. Even if people tell me, dude, this was an amazing interview, after the show, great interviewer you are, or, had a great time.
Definitely a great interviewer.
Still, I appreciate that, man. It's right back at you. I'm up front. I ask people to share it out with their audience because I'm going to do the same for their brand. But the thing is, not everybody does. I've had certain authors on. Most people do, but some even who do will then just shoot it out to their Twitter that's almost inactive. You know what I mean? Just to kind of be like, okay, I threw you a bone. Instead of being like, let's really collab here. So what are your thoughts on leveragepreneuring, or more so direct question would be, how do you recommend people show up regardless of the initial wall of cynicism that they are going to inevitably face from people who they're trying to work with who are ahead of them?
Absolutely. Really, really good question. Really timely question. I have had to check myself quite a few times. I am very thankful for the success of the show and the caliber of people we get on the show. I've had to check myself quite a few times because I'll get hit up, hey man, I'd love to be on your show, or someone will make a recommendation or referral, and I'm sure as you progress in your show, you'll realize that like referrals, you kind of begin to cringe about. You're like, all right, who do you want me to talk to? But I got to say, man, some of the most powerful conversations and strongest takeaways, the hands down aren't the most downloaded or maybe not even the most shared, but like the level of feedback and emotion that I get from some people who come from people with like 1,000 followers who are quote unquote a social media nobody. It really is, you have to, again, goes back to perspective and mindset. So I would say the first part of your question is treat every person. Of course, do your homework and, vet them in terms of, hey, like I have an idea of what I want the message of my show, the theme of my show to look like and to sound like and to represent. So make sure no matter who they are, that fits the bill. But after that, treat every person. Once they make it past that checkpoint, every person you're talking to after that point is like your goal guest, like your ideal guest. Like it's Oprah. Imagine you're interviewing Oprah or somebody at that level. Or for me, imagine like every person I was interviewing was Sean Stevenson because he's like my podcast guest goal. And if you go into it thinking like that, like it will resonate. And I've heard shows, and I've even caught myself a few times in some interviews in the past where I'm like, wow, Chase, you're discrediting this person. Like you're sitting here scrolling through your phone or like not really paying attention, or you're not honoring them as a person and their time. And that's not fair. And that's not right. If you made time for them to come on here, honor that time and honor that person as if they are whoever else you think they need to be, because those conversations are so real. And I'm such a big believer that everybody has a story to tell, and who am I to discredit that, But then after that, I would say, to your point of like getting caught up of like, you're going to throw me on a Twitter account that hasn't seen any engagement in months, or, maybe even they don't share it out. That just comes with the territory. And, and of course we always greatly appreciate when the conversation resonates with the guests and they feel compelled enough to share it out with their audience, especially if they have a big audience, big following. You're like, because that is potential. That's potential new listeners and growth and all of these ROIs here. But also when that doesn't happen, when somebody doesn't share something out, or you feel awkward for asking, I really had to become more comfortable with just recognizing that, okay, it may have been a good episode. It may have been all of these things that check off these boxes for me, but for whatever reason, it didn't do the same for them. And what that really means is that my vision doesn't fully align with their vision. It doesn't mean mine's right and theirs is wrong or vice versa. It just means they are different. And that's definitely one area that I had to really kind of think more about and just recognize that, like, okay, all right, well, I guess I thought differently. Maybe, down the road they'll share it out again or it'll come back to them in some way, shape, or form. But at least I know if I went into the interview and I answered all the questions I wanted and we did all these things, I can stand by my work. And if for whatever reason they don't, or they don't right now, you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I like that, Jocko Willink. Good.
Yeah.
I said good. Yeah. Going with what you just shared, being okay with that, genuinely, just being unexpected.
Ditch the expectations. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I genuinely had zero expectations of an interview I did recently, and he shared it. And this guy has a lot of followers with his branding, and I did not expect it at all. But at the end of the interview, for whatever reason, he saw himself in me, and he was like, hey, I'm going to share this out. Send me the file, this, that, and the third. I'm going to have a video team create some, chop up some content. And I said, you're welcome to use it. Just tag me. And he was like, oh, of course, and put it out there. And I wasn't expecting it at all. I actually forgot how big his brand was. I genuinely forgot. And that freedom of expression and freedom to create without expectation or reciprocity or some kind of tether to baggage of, oh, I hope they hook me up or something awkward like that.
Yes.
It actually, at that free moment, you're free. It sounds corny, but you are literally just enjoying the freaking ride and you're just soaring. And then good stuff just will happen. It just will when it's supposed to, and that's why I really like how you shared that about when it doesn't as well. Even if you did good, did you really do everything you could possibly do? For me, I'm thinking, Chase, recently, I could do a better job of chopping up an episode, finding like the absolute highlight points, maybe 1-2 minute long, creating a short video that is file sized and aspect ratioed appropriate for their preferred platform, be it Facebook or Instagram, and emailing that to them saying, hey, you're free to use this. And oh, by the way, not heavily branding it with a transparent logo of your logo all over it. Like, oh, by the way, this is my podcast,
tag,
you know what I mean?
Tag,
so you're, but that's actually giving value to because they always need new content, right? And if they did an interview they're proud of, which your podcast, my own, of course they're going to be, but yeah, just always thinking from the other person's perspective. So that's one thing I'm considering doing is creating short video or audiograms for Instagram that people can share, whether on their story, because that expires. That's not a huge ask, or on Facebook. So you always have to be honest too with, did I do everything that I could to provide value to this person,
Yeah, man. The more you can work on, the person listening right now, the more that you can work on releasing an expectation from anyone or anything in your life, whether it's a positive or negative, what you're really doing is you're releasing that tether to it. You're releasing that chain to it, especially to someone listening who is maybe doing a podcast or any type of content creation, video, photo, YouTube, IG, whatever. Release that expectation. It's so true what Jonathan says. It is so liberating. You are literally free from that chain. Yeah, another thing right there, man, reminded me of the conversation I had with Sean last week about, relationship developing, particularly with people on social media. And it's so trendy right now. Hey, what can I do for you? What can I do for you? I love what you're doing. Let me know what I can do for you. Man, I don't have time to sit here and think about I know I got problems and areas to grow, but like, I can't try to like go through your resume and like, oh yes, you would be best suited for my, SEO or whatever. Like, do what Jonathan just said, come prepared with a solution already. Hey, not only here's the link to the show, but I recognize I did the work that Facebook is your biggest platform and I see you engaged there the most. So I'm going to make something more optimized for Facebook and then just, boom, let it go and give it to them right there. I actually had an episode a couple weeks ago with Whitney Miller. She's Aubrey Marcus's fiance, like Mrs. On It, like huge in the space. And was not expecting anything at all. It went live. Boom. I saw it on her story. She shared it out. It was huge. But then I was like, she tagged the wrong EverForward account. Like she tagged the apparel instead of the radio, instead of the podcast.
Well, hey, that's good for Max, right?
Yeah, true. Yeah, Max, you owe me like, I don't know how many thousands of followers or eyes on you got on that day. I'll take 10% of the profits. But then I DM'd her. I was like, Whitney, like, thanks again. The conversation was so amazing. I really appreciate you sharing it out. But just, EverForward has different platforms. Here's the link for the podcast. And then I was just like, boom, let it go. A couple hours later, she took it down and recorrected it. So like, that's huge. So if you show up and do the work necessary and deliver, like, so clearly I delivered and she got value out of that conversation, that podcast. So not only was it worth her time and effort, EverForward. She's way more busy and, higher up than, me on like the social ladder. But, she put it up there, she took it down and put it back up and corrected it. So if you do the work, if you show up how you need to, the people on the other side will recognize that and do what they can to support you.
It's powerful, man. It's true. Do you find people reach out to you and say, hey, how did you get this guest?
Oh, yeah, all the time. Yeah. It goes from either like, hey, how do you create a podcast? Like, how did you create such a successful podcast? And I'm like, well, define success. Like, what do you mean by that? And then also, yeah, how did you get this guy? How did you get that girl? How did you get all these big guests? Because, yeah, we do get some really amazing, high caliber guests. I recognize that. So we get asked that a lot. Like, hey, can you shoot me a referral, make an introduction? How did you do this? It happens a lot.
One thing to touch on what you mentioned before about how people say, hey, what can I do for you? That's a very lazy value ask, right? Or value add, because they're not actually adding value. It's kind of you're
making more work for the other person.
Exactly. I've actually not even had much of that, to be honest. I really have. Most people who approach me are saying, hey, do you have a minute to talk? I want to know how you did this. I'm happy to spend time with them. I love it. But at the end of the day too, I recognize that it's just interesting, even myself, when I get approached by people and their approach is very much just selfish, and I can respect that. At least they're not trying to dance around it like, oh, I'll do something for you. They're just like, can you tell me how? So I respect that. But if you do want something in return, so to speak, the best bet, in my opinion, it takes time. It takes patience and showing up. Like you said show up over time. And if it's right, it'll work out. Don't try to force anything.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Just show up. Again, and keep, referencing Jocko here, but, discipline over motivation all the time, because yes, they're not, again, not if, but when those days show up where you don't feel like doing anything, you've just been seemingly beating your head against the wall and like, am I successful? Have I created anything? What's the point of it all? Which we all experience once you start doing anything for yourself.
Chase, a big hack. I'm going to interject because a big thing that I started doing is I recommend you may or may not do this. I'll ask you, do you? If people give me any physical thing, whether in the mail or friend to friend, or a note or anything that says, by the way, your podcast this episode really spoke to me, or I keep that and I made a shoebox now. And I call it like my shoebox of why I'm not going to quit. You know what I mean? For years, because when those days freaking come, which they do, where for whatever reason, the demons of doubt creep in and say, oh, what is this really doing? It's not passive. You have to be in it all the time. Is this really worth it? Whatever. All the obnoxious questions we tend to ask ourselves at least once a month. It's like in those moments, it's like, no, I got this shoebox right here. I can kick it. There's a reason I'm doing this. If I need to be reminded, I'll look in there and say, okay, wow, all it takes is one person giving unsolicited feedback. One person.
Yeah, I do have those touch points. And that's, luckily, we have created a brand where a part of it is things you wear. And so the apparel part, I keep the EverForward bracelet on my wrist 24/7. So no matter when or why or what's going on, I can look down and I have that reminder. And I don't drive as much as I used to. The perks of kind of living in a metropolitan area, you get to walk everywhere because fitness. Yeah. On the rear view mirror of my car, I keep my dad's dog tags. And so many times when I was back in DC, when I was still working and commuting, and I was banging my head against the wall, I'm like, why am I going to this job? Why am I running out to the car to do a podcast interview during my lunch break? Why am I doing all these things? I literally would, whether I was having the worst day or the best day, I would just reach up and I would grab hold of my dad's dog tags and I would be like, thank you. Or I would just see it, and it would be an instant reminder of like, Chase, quit your complaining. Like, shut up. You have this amazing life, amazing friends, amazing family. Like, you haven't earned the right to complain. Which goes back to, I get asked a lot, when I was going through my injuries and in that med hold unit, they're like, well, how did you not just like shut up and close up and die and get so depressed and angry? Like, literally your identity was changed, your job changed, you were broken. Every day when I could, if I wasn't bedridden, I would go to formation. And this med hold unit specialized in amputees and burn victims from people coming back from theater, people coming back just hours, days ago. They were in a convoy, under attack, blown up, missing arms, burned, third-degree burns head to toe. And well, yes, what I went through sucked and was very, very trying physically, mentally, emotionally. It was nowhere near the level of what these other men and women were coming back and experiencing, or what they weren't coming back with. And so I had no right. I didn't deserve to complain about anything. And so that's, always something I remember in my endeavors today as well.
That's huge. That's huge. I have so much respect for our military. So if you are, whether you're active duty or not, I thank you for your service. And Chase, thank you for your service as well.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
100%. In conclusion of the show, how old are you now, Chase?
I'm 33.
33 years old. Wow. Still a young buck here.
Thank you. I like to think so.
27. So I'm excited for my journey into, I'm not married right now. I'm excited for this next season that you've seemed to be living through. And it's an exciting time in life. You're married, you got your own place, your business is, it's taken off, and, it's taken years and you're still working in it, understood, but you're ahead of me in those areas, and it's exciting to see that it's worth the effort. So if you could go back in time to a place when 20-something Chase, if you could go back in time, you see your, let's say, 20-something-year-old self sitting on a park bench, or maybe you were at boot camp going through a lot, you're sitting there, you're staring off, you're zoned out. If you could go up present day, knowing everything everything you've lived through thus far, and put your arm around your own shoulder, what would you say to your younger self? What would you tell him to do and not to do, and why?
You are exactly where you're supposed to be. We see people and things and the glorification through social media and the highlight reel that, like, why haven't I achieved this? Why haven't I done this yet? But it truly is all about the process, and the process involves wherever you are right now, right then and there. And that's a good question. One of the things that I struggle with the most, and I mentioned this earlier, it seriously took me the better part of a decade to open up, to really kind of be comfortable with the whole mental health aspect, because losing my father not only was losing my father, but we were so close, and he meant so much to me. I lost my best friend. I lost my mentor. I lost my leader, my sergeant, all of these things that he was to me. And I kept it all into myself. And that really, part of it was just because I really had no choice. He passed away and had to immediately go back to Army life. I had to go back to being a soldier just a few days later, and for years later. We have to carry on mission first, but I wish I would have let more people in, not only just on the good days and share those wins and victories, but especially on the bad days. I suffered what I did physically through the military, but really during that time, diagnosed mild PTSD, diagnosed TBI due to the medications I was on for my surgeries. I had a seizure, knocked myself unconscious, got a TBI, PTSD, all these things. And I wish I would have just allowed myself the opportunity to open up more and feel, to truly feel, instead of just brushing things under the rug. I can say I'm at a point now where it's gotten a lot better, and I've worked through what I needed to work through, or at least I've found what I need to keep working through. But for a long time, for years, I kept it all in, and it hurt me, and it hurt a lot of other people in my life along the way.
So would you recommend, if you could say something to that at that point in time in your life, what would you tell them?
Just share everything. The right person, the right level of trust. You need to invest that time in developing that relationship to just share everything. And I thought I was, but I was being very selective with not so much who I was letting in. I've always been a very friendly, amicable person. I can make friends with, the wall, but, to the depth of which that relationship looked like, a lot of people deserved more. And so I would say, share everything with the people that deserve it.
Boom. Chase, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's been amazing, man. I always love hopping on the other side of the microphone, so I say.
Now, I want the audience to connect with you, not only subscribe to EverForward Radio, but to find you on Instagram, follow you there. How can they follow up with you after the show and connect with you, Chase?
Yeah, you said it. The show, our podcast, EverForward Radio. We're basically on anywhere you enjoy podcasts. We're there on every platform, but my Instagram is where I'm most active, most engaged. The handle is just @Chase_Chewning. Chewning, or you can just Google EverForward, and everything we have to offer will most likely pop up for you.
I also want to let you guys know, don't miss this interview. If you feel any of this resonated with you, your story or anything, email me, email Chase directly. I know he'd love to hear from you, whether that's a DM on Instagram.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, brother. And before we go, what is your favorite type of coffee?
Nitro cold brew, even more specifically, literally such a pain point I had when I left DC. Shout out Compass Coffee, DC. It's veteran owned, veteran operated all over Washington, DC. I will never, ever, ever have a better cup of coffee, more specifically, a better nitro cold brew than Compass Coffee. So Northern Virginia, DC, if you're there, go check them out. Guaranteed. That was good, man. Jonathan, really, really enjoyed that conversation. Thanks, man.
Congratulations on making it to the end of this episode. What about this episode stood out to you? Next, I need your help sharing this show. I want this podcast to impact and reach 6,000 people per episode by August 31st, 2019. And I want us to reach 15,000 people per month by March 29th, 2020. Have you been enjoying multiple episodes of The Heart Healthy Hustle? I'm thrilled to share with you an exclusive invitation to join our new Facebook community. To get to know other Heart Healthy Hustlers, simply go to thehearthealthyhustle.com/Facebook, where you can expect to see different members of our community being featured weekly in Facebook Live calls. I appreciate all of your love and support, and I will see you in the next episode. As always, be generous on every occasion. There is a story for you, and live wide open.